my name's Lisa Williams. I'm the founder of the Edinburgh Carribean Association. I'm also Honorary Fellow at Edinburgh University in the History Department. I run Black History Tours for Edinburgh. I do a lot of Black History education in schools and universities and communities around Scotland. Well, I started at the Caribbean Association originally because I'm partly of Caribbean heritage myself, lived in the Caribbean for a long time, had my kids there, and bringing my children from the Caribbean to Scotland and trying to find a sense of identity for them as Caribbean Scots, and wanting to find a place for them in terms of a coherent Caribbean Scottish identity and what that really meant. And it made me look back at the historical connections between Scotland and the Caribbean. Heavily influenced also by Sir Geoffrey Palmer, who is Scotland's first Black professor and has done a lot of work on this in communities. And actually going to one of his talks really got me interested in the specific Scottish context of all of this. So I've been researching quite heavily for about 3 years now, particularly around Edinburgh's connections with the built heritage. There are tours that talk about this in Glasgow, but there hadn't really been anything done in Edinburgh, and I thought that was surprising given it was a capital city. So we look at particularly the links with the Caribbean during the slave trade system, because the built heritage can be easily linked to those stories, but we're also looking at other links with Black people who were living in Edinburgh, in terms of people who were living in the royal court even before the period of enslavement. But we're also looking at other stories and other connections which take us right up to the modern day. Decolonising the curriculum. This is a word that's actually been used for several decades among certain scholars, but it's not something that is talked about very much in our day-to-day language. So it's something that's been creeping into the conversation more, particularly in arts and heritage institutions, universities, and also schools. So decolonising the curriculum sounds really complicated, but all it really is bringing context to a lot of the history and other subjects that we have. Some of the stories, some of the people, some of the strands of knowledge that have been left out. Partly because they haven't been recorded in the history books, partly because it's difficult to find those histories, but it's providing a context which actually makes it a lot fairer for children of all different backgrounds, because they get a fuller understanding of why the global economy works in the way that it does, why there is inequality, and why we have issues of ecological issues, going back to histories that are sometimes difficult and a bit sensitive and people find hard to talk about. But unless we unpack those things, unless we understand those things, we don't really understand the legacies from that particular period. Well, this is something we hear from teachers quite a bit. And again, there's been a lot of work in this area. There's a lot of different organisations working on this across Scotland. So I think it would be good for teachers to link up with some of these different organisations and try to go to conferences, get informed by it. Dr. Rowena Arshad, who was at Edinburgh University until recently, has done a lot of work on this. So I think we do hear this from teachers a lot, that they're frightened to approach the subject because they don't have the language to talk about it. They worry about offending, they worry about making things worse, which I think is a very valid thought to have, and actually very important. Some teachers will say, oh, well, everyone makes mistakes, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. Potentially quite a dangerous thing to do. So making sure that when you deliver this material, it's done very sensitively. Whether you have a multicultural classroom, whether you've got a monocultural classroom, because it's very important, the kinds of images, the kinds of language, the kinds of ideas that students are hearing from the get-go, that's the kind of foundation for how they're going to think about things later on. So it is important that people feel equipped, they feel confident, and that they can approach it in the best way that they can. So Black History Month is founded in America to begin with, then in England. It's been in Scotland since 2001. So for Black History Month, the whole idea about it is to celebrate the achievements of Black people in Scotland, and areas, if we think about Scotland in terms of its larger empire even, we can weave and bring in stories from different areas where Scots were involved. So that's the main idea behind it, but I think it's important that I think most of us working in this field are eventually wanting to move away from just having 1 month put aside for Black History. That's the situation we're in at the moment. I do think it's important that we have a timeline that we work towards to say, well, eventually everything is going to be integrated into the rest of the curriculum and we don't have this as a separate thing. So we all need to work together to find ways that we can do that throughout the curriculum.